My moral message basically to all of you, because you are the chosen one from the Indonesia to study abroad, basically, and you are based in the Netherlands now. Wherever you are, once you are done with your studies here, when you come back to Indonesia or wherever in the world, please do spread the Indonesian spirit, okay? As well as your knowledge, your skills, wherever you are. I always call it, it's not brain drain, it's old-fashioned terms. When you're studying about innovation studies, when you study about the geography, economic geography, brain drain is old story. What we are calling now is brain circulation. So you have to circulate your skill and knowledge wherever you are. And that's the thing basically I've been trying to do over the last 10 years since I moved to the UK, and now I'm living permanently in the Netherlands. And this part of the PPI legacy, the Indonesian Student Associations in the world, we've got a very strong activity in the UK, basically. Not just for the London, but also across the UK. Since I was, well, I've been based in Newcastle, although I haven't finished my job there as a lecturer, but since I moved here, then my job title is becoming a visiting fellow. Right, without further ado. Okay, let's have a look. I'll give you time to have a look at the slide. What sort of preparation you have to do in order to write a good academic piece of work. If you look at the first one, school or faculty. So I'm sure that you are aware of your school's requirement. If you are based in law, you might have school, a handbook of law school, for example. And in that handbook, you might find some requirements. Okay? Same goes with the other faculty. If you are based in, for example, economics or school of business administration, which is close to my husband's office, basically, organization studies. I always look at the, economics, all right, so that's my place here in Tilburg. So always have a look at the requirements and handbook of your faculty or school. Even it's just a small print, but it does make a difference. Don't skip any small writing, okay? And again, bear in mind, once you got this dissertation, thesis project, I'm sure that your school gave you a supervisor, yeah? Or you can call it tutor, or you can call it mentor, okay? But officially the name is supervisor. Let me check, is it okay? Can you follow me so far? If I'm trying to speak slowly and duidelijk, okay? Langzaam maar zeker. Ik zal proberen, huh? But if you think that it's too fast, too snel, then doe maar, stop me. Okay? Right, so you must have known who is your supervisor. And also, her or his research interest. You have to know this at the beginning. Why? Because if your supervisor doesn't have the knowledge of your subject, that's going to be catastrophe. Yes?
I don't know if what's the case in our faculty, but in the international business, the supervisor is based on our main interests, like for instance marketing, strategy, or like, and in the blackboard is stated that
perfect.
So.
Perfect, yeah. Because to some extent, it happens in wherever I am invited to give this kind of workshop. Sometimes they don't have what they call a significant and relevant supervisor. And in the middle of process, they realize, oh gosh, he or she doesn't know what I'm talking about. That's catastrophic. And try to avoid this since at early stage as possible. And if you have this kind of system, brilliant. Because you can be safe at least, you know. You have sort of comfort blanket. Oh yeah, she has the same research interest like what I'm going to do. Oh yeah, they know the language. And bear in mind, when talk about the thesis, you must write in very specific language. If it is law, there are a lot of jargon in law, a lot of jargon in international business. I myself, I was trained as international business and strategic management, and then I expanded my research interest into innovation studies and economic geography. And therefore I got my fellowship from regional studies associations. So, point 3. Oh, sorry. And this one, okay? Since at the beginning of your supervision process, so basically they've already matched you up with this, and then you say, right, so the supervisor will say, we're going to have our first meeting. So when you come to his office or her office, at least you must have some ideas. Don't just go to their places with empty hand or empty head. That's not good, okay? Especially to show that you are a good Indonesian student, okay? Because the world is small, and they know that there's a lot of Indonesian population in Tilburg University. And also, since my husband married me, you know, most of his colleagues, oh right, okay, so there's Indonesian connection. And he said, oh yeah, but Indonesian students, it's always the best. Oh yeah, it's heel pinter, yeah. So, there you go, okay? At least what you have, I'm sure that you have done, or I don't know, a research plan or proposal. Yeah? We're going to talk through over the next slide, basically. But at least bring your research proposal. And what is research proposal? I will talk later. Okay? Just talk and bear in mind, this is the first meeting, so they don't expect you to be the expert of that knowledge. But at least you come up with some ideas. Oh right, this is the thing I'm going to discuss. This is my topic. This is sort of the theory that I'm going to use. This is my idea for methodology. This is my idea for data analysis. Just in a nutshell. Just on the surface. You don't have to go into deeper. Okay? And another important thing is knowing the practicalities. Basically it's 5W1H. Okay? When do you have to submit? To whom do you have to submit? How do you do the printing stuff? All these small little things, the practicalities, but it is urgent. And bear in mind, if you don't have any printer at home or in your room, you have to go to the library to print them off, and the next day the library is closed. Boom! You cannot print off your paper. That's catastrophe. So you must think ahead. Look at the big picture. Look at the practicalities. Small thing, but it does have a big influence. So I have an analogy. You can stumble or you can fall off because of a pebble or small stone or a big stone.
Small stone.
Small stone. Anda bisa jatuh bukan karena batu yang besar, tapi karena batu yang kecil atau kerikil. Karena batu yang besar, obviously you've seen that. Oh, batu. So Anda menghindari, skip away. But if it is small stone, like practicalities, time, when do you have to submit? Do you need extension for this? Things like this. And if you don't know, bang. Because I have a story. Teman saya, waktu ngambil master di Newcastle, oh, he's brilliant and he's home student. And I always compare myself to him. And my father said, stop comparing, stop benchmark yourself to him. He's a native, blah, blah. At the time, my English was still, well, yeah, I didn't say crap, but, you know, still not sufficient. But then, when we had to submit our, we call it dissertation, his computer is not working. And therefore, dia nggak bisa print off all the paper. At 9 a.m. is 9 a.m. Op is op. Must be on time. And then I said, oh, Graham, I did submit my dissertation. Oh, it's so relief. Dia nggak bisa submit karena komputernya rusak, datanya mungkin ada yang rusak. So 1 tahun harus diulang lagi. Katastrofe kan? It's just being sloppy. That's what we call it. Don't be sloppy students. Although you are smart, but don't neglect small things like this. It can stumble you down and you will regret that. The whole investment within a year going to trade. Okay? So, the last message basically, before we get down into the writing process, down the business, get it written. Rather, get it right. Jangan takut salah. So yang penting itu kalau punya ide, jot it down, writing it down. Karena kalau misalnya kita punya ide, terus kita, apalagi kalau misalnya mau sebelum tidur itu biasanya, oh impian itu banyak gitu. Oh andai, aku punya, itu lagunya Oke dulu ya, saya masih ingat itu. Tapi nggak di writing it down, so it's just di awang-awang itu, di negeri awan. So if you do have ideas, especially for your research plan, dissertation, put it down, either into your laptop or your notebook, whatever, or your iPad. But please get it written. Nah, kalau misalnya belum benar, grammatically is not correct, that's later, just leave it later for editing. But at least itu kristal-kristal itu masukkan dalam tulisan. And you have to bear in mind how many word accounts you have to submit. For master in the UK, it's roughly about 80,000 words. That is for engineering. For the social sciences, I think it's around roughly 100K, which is roughly itu 35 atau 40, 45 pages lah. It's piece of cake. If you haven't done it, it is a big cake, it's difficult, but once you've done it, it's a piece of cake. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Okay? So therefore, you have to know how many words account. And then you can combine. Okay, saya punya project ini 4 bulan. So dalam 1 hari, berapa yang harus saya tulis? I always do that since I was doing my undergrad, my bachelor, my PhD, and other project basically. Sehingga kita tahu target kita dalam 1 hari itu berapa gitu. So at least kalau saya sampai sekarang kalau misalnya saya nulis jurnal atau editing book, saya lihat, saya kasih waktu hanya 3 minggu. So 1 hari at least itu 1000 kata lah. 1000 kata itu kurang lebih 4 halaman lah. So preparations, ideas. Oh, ide. Sama ya bahasa Indonesia dan Dutch ide. Dat is een goed idee. Okay. Thank you well. Make sure you know what the purpose of the essay or research proposal or perhaps this thesis. Maksudnya apa gitu? What the purpose gitu? I hope this writing workshop will be useful for your essay or assignment writing as well. Karena sebagai marker, saya tidak melihat ini orang ini nulisnya apa sih? Tujuannya pertama itu apa itu? Nah itu yang harus jelas. Nanti ada bentuk strukturnya, insya Allah akan saya lanjutkan. Okay? But you must be clear. If it is essay, explicitly mention this essay identifies such and such. This essay evaluates such and such. Or if it is a research proposal, this research proposal aims to blah blah blah. Or if it is thesis, this thesis will study about such and such. Be clear, not just this piece of writing will be talking about blah blah blah. Piece of writing what? Because sebagai editor, saya juga harus critical. This, that, they refers to whom? This refers to what? You have to be clear and bear in mind in the UK they are using their own language, and therefore I was trained to be more sensitive, not just the content but also the nuances of the English, and therefore a college here they employ me as a how to get the best ideas. And therefore, guys, I do believe 2 brains, or let's say 3 brains, are better than just 1. So, you have to brainstorm with colleagues, teman sekelas, atau teman yang kira-kira orang ini kayaknya kritis ini, oke nih dikasih. Oke lah, nanti dikasih kapsalon nanti kalau sudah puas gitu ya. atau ke kafe gitu ya. Tapi kafe di sini kan ada dua definisi, dua hati kan. So brainstorm, especially this is my strategy. If you fancy someone in your class and you think that he or she is the star, approach him or approach her. But of course, professionally. Oh, I really like your ideas when you talk about this is this. Would that be fine if we continue discussion later in lunchtime? Oh, orang itu pasti akan merasa, oh yeah, oh, okay, sure, yeah. See, praise them first. This is part of marketing, okay? You have to praise them and then do what you want in professional way. Karena langsung, ayo kita ke kapsulan yuk, nanti ngomongin kamu siapa? Ada ayo langsung gitu. So, you know, istilahnya orang Jawa kulon dulu gitu. Terus masuk pintunya jebret, okay. Okay? So, peer group. If you do have discussion group, which I'm sure you've got, let's say a workshop, you know, every kind of, how do you call that, group assignments. I'm sure you've been appointed or you've been assigned to a group, okay? So use that group as your brainstormer, as your discussion place, okay? Or even go directly to the tutor or to your lecturer. Of course, he or she will be busy, but that's a part of their job. They are getting paid off serving you. So, once you are done with the lecture, at the end of the lecture, approach him or approach her. I like, for example, okay, if you're taught by my husband, Rule, what do you think about this? I have this idea about this. Would you mind discussing with me? He will be interested in that case. Rather than he comes to you, people here, especially in the Western world, they really like if you come to them. Karena nggak ada yang namanya ivory tower itu nggak ada itu. Di sini kan semuanya nggak terlalu birokrasi kan. Kita panggil dosennya nama gitu. So yeah, approach them. Interactive discussion, okay? Or after that, jangan terbawa oleh kapsalon gitu. Setelah kapsalon selesai, pulang ke rumah, pulang ke kamar, itu ide yang di abang-abang tadi diendapkan gitu. Diendapkan melalui tulisan. Oh tadi ini intinya ini, keywordnya ini. Find the keyword, at least 5. Okay? And that's what I call self-research. And sources. The academic sources, basically, what are they? Well, I'm sure you've got them here. Journal, textbook, others. Journals, bear in mind, you have to be very specific, very careful in terms of choosing journal. Why I say so? As a scientist myself, as a journal writer myself, there are plenty of journals, but some of them, they could be rubbish. Okay? So therefore, always look at their impact factor. And if you are not sure whether this is a good journal or that is a bad journal for your relevant studies, ask your tutor. I've been using this, what do you think? I've been using this. Do you think it's necessary? Do you think it's a good journal? Because that's his job, or that's her job. Okay? Don't just keep it to yourself. Kalau Anda tak tanya, ya Anda you'll get lost. Okay? And textbook, especially for those who are in the business school. The sort of common sense in the UK, basically, we prefer to have textbook or journal starting from 2000. But, with the exception, if you have something which is very relevant, something as a bedrock of your knowledge, and that particular quotation is 1918, 1927, 1930, you can use that, but you must follow this bedrock of knowledge with the recent argumentation among the scholars in that specific journals. Okay? Otherwise, we simply call it the journals, the reference that you are using is, I'm sorry to say, it's quite outdated. Because basically you have to keep in mind, what is the trend in the journal? Because journal itu tempat para saintis untuk berperan dalam artian argumentasi. So basically ada satu jurnal, misalnya saya klaim jurnal masalah otomotif di Indonesia. Terus ada orang lain, oh ternyata nggak benar ya sih, harus ini seperti, so saya akan gempur lagi melalui jurnal. So that's the way we fight. Okay, so therefore you have to bear in mind about journals and textbook and try to use outdated journal. And also, since you are based in the Netherlands or in the Western country, one of the source book which I think is very relevant, if you make comparative case study, use the Western sources and then compare with the local context, in this case Indonesian journal. Karena itu pandangan cendekiawan di barat dan di timur kadang beda. And that's the reason you can fill in the gap. Sehingga dia tahu, oh perkembangan ekonomi di Eropa itu seperti ini, di Indonesia seperti ini gitu loh. So kita nggak bisa ngomong di Indonesia tuh seharusnya seperti kayak di Eropa gini-gini nih. Iya, tapi kan lokal konteksnya beda gitu. So you have to give some local context journal, for example. And there are a lot. Yes.
Maaf Mbak, bisa saya potong.
Silahkan.
Itu tadi saya tertarik tentang jurnal ya,
Yeah.
lokal Indonesian journal.
Yeah.
Itu gimana carinya tuh? Sementara kita di sini dan kayaknya menurut saya sih sulit ya.
Okay. Kalau Indonesian journal agak sulit, larinya ke Asia Pasifik. So there are a lot of journal based in Asia Pacific, and even Western journal like Harvard, dia punya specific edition for Asia. We get down to the structure of essay or dissertation or thesis. Okay. Before introductions, basically, you must have a title. Title is crucial because basically, title can mislead the reader if it is not a good title. Karena judul itu pasti menarik orang untuk membaca gitu. Makanya novel-novel itu misalnya di itu ya, Devil Star itu misalnya kapal kertas atau perahu kertas, kan membuat orang praise Iris, what is about? So there you go. A good title basically is not necessarily short. You can come up with a long title as long as it is focused, precise, concise, and it's already a framework or the compilation of the whole thesis.
Kalau yang provokatif gimana?
Provokatif bagus, tapi bahayanya nanti naskah Anda itu harus menjawab pertanyaan itu, provokatifnya itu. You can play around. Provokatif, we call in English sometime with
Engaging.
oh gosh, what's that? No, question tag. Pertanyaan yang I forgot, it's top of my head. Never mind. Provokatif boleh, but be sensible with the rest of your. If you are not sure yet, if it's still a research plan, you can put WIP title, work in progress title, because later on, once you are done with the final manuscript, you might think the title is no longer valid for this, so you not change, but you improvise, you revise. So perhaps when you submit your research plan, say you have to clearly mention that this title is work in progress, such and such. Yes?
Kalau misalkan Mbak bilang kayak gitu, berarti kita bekerjanya berdasarkan observasi kita, bukan berdasarkan judul. Jadi kita nggak bikin boundary di mana kita observasi gitu.
Research plan, basic, saya belum berbicara masalah thesis ya. Ini baru research plan. Have you done your research plan? Oh, research proposal. Ya, menurut saya research proposal tuh Anda bekerja berdasarkan title, karena Anda belum tahu medannya itu gimana sih, belum tahu gitu loh. It's still your fantasy, it's still blue sky research, okay? Because you don't know the reality yet, and therefore having a good title, although it's still WIP, it will give you a clear idea how to conduct research. So leave it as it is. Yeah, at least you have some title ideas. Okay. Introductions. After title, Because title itu penting karena, so what is your topic? What is your title? I'm not really sure what it's about the final things, but at least something about this. Right, discuss with your supervisor. He or she might give you some specific terms, the terminology. So introductions. In your introductions, you must have sort of aims, okay, and also background. Aims dan background. Aims itu tujuannya apa gitu loh. Ada orang itu aims itu disamaartikan dengan background. It's not that right yet. Aim itu basically tujuan. So tujuan dari thesis ini apa? So you can say this thesis is aim to evaluate such and such. This thesis is aim to investigate such and play around. Where the word is very crucial. If you say evaluate, then you might use quantitative or qualitative analysis because you're going to evaluate, which means starting from this year to another year, so it's gonna be longitudinal studies. Because evaluation, logikanya kita nggak mungkin mengevaluasi something sebelum ada implikasi, sebelum ada sesuatu yang sudah dilakukan. Am I right? Investigate, you can say this is something new, and how does it work? How is the process? Investigate. So play around with the word is very crucial. Evaluate, investigate, to analyze. Be sensitive with this word, because within this word, the reader, especially their experienced reader, they can point, oh right, so basically he's going to use quantitative because he's going to evaluate. Investigate, could be ethnography. So, and don't try to outsmart your supervisor. Although he or she is still young, like myself, and sometimes people say, you're too young. Right, okay, let's give it a go. That's the introduction. So be clear with aims, background. Background itu dalam bahasa Indonesia apa? Latar belakang, kan? So basically, in your research, I'm still talking about research proposal. In your research proposal, the background basically is a little bit of literature view. So what is the theory about such and such? Just a little bit. You don't have to put everything there, because, excuse me, in your research plan, the word is limited. Perhaps it's 1,500 or something. But basically, what is happening? So for example, let's choose the topic of CSR in Assamese in Asia, in ASEAN. Okay? So basically, the introductions, first the aim. This research plan, this thesis is aimed to fill in the gap, the literature about CSR in Western world and in Asia. Particularly for this research, we're going to focus on ASEAN because such and such, blah, blah. So that's the aim, okay? And the background, CSR basically is a very big word name in corporate social responsibility in the Western world. So how does it implemented in Asia? Well, there are a lot of study in Western world, but there are few studies in Asia. So mention that little thing. And put a little bit of quotation. Because it shows that you have read some textbook or journals. Not just giving your own opinion. Okay? A little bit of theory, but not too much. And mention what it's about in the local context. So after you bring up the CSR theory a little bit, then mention, in ASEAN, CSR has not been developed. And therefore, we aim, repeat it again, it's okay. Okay? That's the background. Also, in introductions, we refers to the reader, the supervisor, to read your research questions or hypothesis. I'm sure you're familiar with this word, aren't you? Okay? Research questions. Pertanyaan risetnya itu apa? Atau kalau misalnya Anda menggunakan kuantitatif, hipotesisnya itu apa. Or if you want to use triangulation, dipakai dua-duanya. So you have to be careful. Therefore, try to get this feeling. Imagine how structured it is. Introductions, aim, and after that you go to background, and then after that you go to research question. In the aim, therefore, use the word of analyze, evaluate. It will be seen on your research question. If you are using analyze, you might use quantitative. If you want to investigate, you might just use research questions, which is qualitative. So, the next one, chapter 2. So be careful. Chapter 1 basically is about introductions. You have to be clear with at least 3 aims. Oh, by the way, if you have research design, you can put in introductions. What is research design? Basically, just a clear idea. Say, for example, I'm going to do this research based on what? Apa gitu. So, masukkan itu di introduction. Ya? Literature review atau chapter 2. Itu basically itu about theory. Teori apa yang Anda gunakan dalam proses penulisan ini, gitu. Dan jangan masukkan yang lain-lain. Nah, tapi kuncinya, literature review is not, I call it, is not library. Could you understand this?
Not yet.
Okay. When you copy and paste, when you have selected some theories, you put into literature review. Is that clear? Good. The next task basically, don't just copy and paste, but engage with them. Give your own opinion. For example, Irawati 2011 says the economy of Indonesia is going well because of such and such. Full stop. And then use your own word, and therefore, the researcher thinks for this particular research, this. So there is engagement. Karena kebanyakan murid itu hanya copy and paste. Okay, so what's the function? So what? Kita para supervisor udah tahu teori ini. So what? How do you use them? You just move them from the library into your own library. There is no engagement, conversation whatsoever. So what? And therefore, I don't know whether you're familiar with linkers. I always say this to my students now. Use the linkers. What's that? However, in addition, in view of that, nevertheless, what else? In conjunction with that. See, the use of linking phrases is crucial to link up the idea from textbook or journal with your own ideas. So that's the use of literature review. Okay? And also, you don't have to put all the literature into one chapter, into just one. You can have 2 literature. For example, one literature is your view from the Western world. And the second one, another literature chapter about the Indonesian, or for example, Asian, or for example, specific topic. Because kalau misalnya itu dicampurkan semua, itu literature tebal gitu. And it's gonna be boring gitu. So break them up and make it more interesting. Okay? Is there any questions so far? Yes.
About the literature review.
Yeah.
I'm a bit confused if, like, sometimes if the teacher asks us to give the review, if I put like two journals in the literature review, is it okay if I use the same journal in the discussion or in the analysis like that?
Of course. The point of literature basically, apa poinnya? Mengapa kita harus punya literature review chapter?
The main foundation.
Say again?
The main foundation.
The main foundation, yeah. For what?
For your opinion. For your ideas.
Yes, I gather your concept. To back up your evidence. To legitimize your findings. To legitimize your data analysis later. And therefore, teorinya itu kita pakai untuk membackup argumen kita nanti. Then of course you must use the current theory that you write on your literature review chapter in the next chapter, which is your data analysis, your conclusion perhaps. Don't come up with other theories in your finding, in your discussion, or even in your conclusion. So basically, it's coming out from out of the blue. You never say about small and medium-sized enterprise, and all of a sudden, in your finding or in the discussion and conclusion, you talk about SMEs. How is it possible? So therefore, in your literature review, you have to write something about SMEs. Okay? So therefore, literature review is playing a crucial part because it is the theoretical framework of your analysis. Karena nanti kalau data analisisnya gini, berdasarkan berdasarkan hasil temuan kita di lapangan, CSR itu harus didukung such and such. Terus Anda mengutip dari teori yang sudah Anda tulis di literature review based on quotation of such and such, but this quotation you got it from literature review. Benang merahnya itu seperti itu. Jadi antara satu chapter dengan chapter yang lain itu pasti having two journals, sorry to say, it's not that sufficient. So because if I have to mark one, let's say one thesis or dissertation, the first thing I have to look at is references. Because it shows whether the student has done his job or not, whether he has read some academic or journals, or he just come up with his own idea. Simple. If it is interesting, all right, oh, it's outdated, okay. Oh, okay, it's very important, okay, fine. That's interesting. Oh, especially if he quotes me, I'm gonna be more interested in. Quote your supervisor, quote your docent, quote your relevant cohort. They will be great. Clear with literature review and tips-tipsnya, yeah? Next, methodology. So once you've done with literature review, basically for your research proposal, they just ask you about introduction, literature review, methodology, and how you analyze the data, and reference. That's it. Because they just want to get an overview. What is your research plan? Okay? But the real thesis, this is a standardized structure for thesis, / dissertation, / essay, / assignment. This is academic standardized things. Wherever you go in the world, it's always having this. So therefore, I can speak about this wherever I go, because it's standardized. Okay. Methodology. Methodology is how do you do your research? How do you undertake the research process? How do you get the data? So you have to be clear what sort of approach are you using. Are you using first quant or qualitative? Or are you using both? Karena bagi yang melakukan kualitatif, itu ada lagi, apakah ini case study, apakah ini etnografi, apakah ini discourse analysis. So get to the library, but ask yourself what sort of methods you want to use. If you are using quantitative, then ask if it is going to be MATLAB, is it going to be SPSS? If so, how do you use SPSS? Have you got the basically the license to do that? Knowing all the practicalities, go to the library, go to your friends, ask. And if you don't know how to use SPSS, you have to be practical. This dissertation time is only 4 months, and I don't know how to use SPSS. No, don't risk yourself. Because otherwise you're going to be headless chicken. So there you go. What's the point? Don't make your life harder. Your life here is already harder, right? So there you go. So make your life a little bit easier. Choose qualitative. However, doing qualitative analysis is not that easy as you imagine. Because it's deeper, it's focused, and you have to tell a good story. And that is difficult. But it's mogelijk. It's niet mogelijk, maar it's mogelijk. Okay? It's difficult, but it's possible. So you have to know about methodology, the strategy, how to do that. So if you go for a case study, I'm myself a case study researcher. Because why? if you're studying innovation, okay, for example, some of them, the scholar, they're just using a patent, patent data. But bear in mind, if you study innovation in developing countries, they don't have sufficient patent data. And therefore, you have to know what is happening underneath those numbers. How do you interpret them? And that's more interesting for me. And that's why it's time-consuming, because you have to think about the practicalities. Will that be semi-structured? Will that be open-ended questions? You have to know about this quality. Will that be interview? And if it is interview, you have to know how to make a good interview, because you have to deal with the people. Because if you don't know how to make a good interview, they will not be open to you. And you will not get information from them. If you are using respondent, bear in mind, if you are doing this questioning or respondent, survey, online survey using the monkey, monkey server, or, a lot of free websites for this thing. Bear in mind about summertime. If your respondent is the local people, that is the summertime. And some of them, they might not check the internet. And you have to chase them around. Wait, don't go to holiday first, answer my questions. If necessary, do that. Well, for the respondent, I always ask for at least 30. That's quite a good standard. For survey, at least you might get 50 or 100. But for interview, at least 30. Aim for 50 or 40, because if you don't get 50, at least you have 30. But if you aim 10, and then you might have 1. And that is very, very small case study. And you cannot make a big conclusion using this. Very. So you might not get distinction then. You already got F. So that's not sufficient. Which is failed. Right, finding. Aha. So basically 1, 2, 3, and reference. That is the dead thing you must have in your research plan. Okay? Because in your plan, you don't have finding yet. If you have a finding, that's magic. We cannot call it research, because Einstein said, you don't know the answer, that's why we call it research. If you do know the answer, how do you call this? You do know already the answer, so how do you call this? Sure. There you go. However, see, I'm using linkers. However, nevertheless, okay? This is getting tricky. I forgot to mention. In methodology, you must answer about the data access. And this is one of the difficulties, the problem from the students. Because I said, oh, your research proposal so far is so good. Excuse me. And by the way, how do you get the data? I don't know how to do this. Well, do you have any connection in this company? Not really. So how do you choose this company? Well, I wish I could. Well, okay, if you could, then try. But how is the chance? Not really good. Okay, stop it. Move to another company then. Choose something which is practical, familiar, and doable. Because now you are not doing blue sky research. You are getting down to do a real research, which is field work. Okay? And therefore, even when you do your survey, you have to bear in mind, who is your population? What is your sample? Who are they? If you're talking about international students, which country you want to focus on? Is it Asian countries, or is it Middle East students, or is it just non-Dutch students, for example? You have to be clear with this. And which university? They are international students in the Netherlands. Okay, that is still a fake to me. Which university? Because there are 14 universities here, so there are 14, international students from those universities. Therefore, title must be focused, precise, concise. You see how this thing connected to one to another. It's not single piece. And when you are done with this chapter, no, hang on. You have to connect this. You have to synthesize, make it coherent from one another. And that's what we call dissertation or thesis. And when you read it, we read the whole book nicely. not just separate story. And I'm sure you get that feeling. When you read it, that's not really right. Oh crap. Okay. And they were one of my tips. Once you are starting reading and writing, do this activity at the same time. Not just reading. Oh, I go to the library. I want to absorb all of these books. Read. No. Because we are human, what you have to do is, when you read at the same time, you write it. Read, write, and then make a monologue. So this theory is talking about this, right? How is the practicality? Right, see. It's coherent, it's dynamic. And the research process is not linear. You know linear is lurus, enggak? Research process itu berombak-ambik, dynamic. Okay? And therefore you have to know about this. And once you're done with your writing, put it aside, let's say for a couple of days. Go to somewhere else where you can get fresh ideas. And then when you're fresh, back to your study, read that. You can get the feeling, actually this is very good, I'm very proud of myself, oh my god, this is crap, oh my god. You can get the feeling, objective feeling. Or if you're afraid of doing that, give it to your friends. But you have to be selective. Which friend? If it is too negative, no. Because otherwise, oh no, this is crap, no, you have to tell it again. How dare you do that? It's not that simple to make this. So, selective in terms of choosing your friends who will read your piece of writing. Because this is your baby. So you have to think from blue sky, make it as a down-to-earth research project. Yeah? Thinking of data access. And what is the implications? If you have to get the data from Indonesia, then you have to do Skype. And the time difference, haha! So you have to know about the time difference. Because I remember when I did my semi-structured interview with some automotive networks, the time difference, basically UK Indonesia at the time is 6 hours. So basically, in the middle of the night, it could be 1 or 2 a.m. UK time. It's already, let's say, midday in Indonesia. And sometimes I didn't sleep. And you must be prepared for doing this. Okay, no pain, no gain. So think about the clarity and also the quality of recording thing. If you're using Skype, how do you record this? Because at the end, if you're doing an interview, pragmatically, I don't want to read the whole transcript because you're not doing psychological stuff. You don't have to put, now his side. If it is psychological thing, you have to do that because they assess, they adjust your behavior. Okay? But if you're doing business, just get the story. But you have to listen again and again and again and again. That's the way you can get mutiaranya itu dari situ. Okay? So time difference, and also top up your Skype. Don't, in the middle of it, oh no, it's off! And then you have to do, no. Making connection is very, very difficult, and therefore treat it as precious as you can. Because otherwise the impression, no, student, typical, not professional. See, there you go. Okay? Who knows? He or she might be your future employer back in Indonesia. You never know. Think ahead and think professional. Not just as a student, but you are posing yourself, you are representing yourself as a researcher. Not just, I'm a student of such a, no. I'm a researcher who is doing MSc program at Tilburg University. Better one, rather than I'm a student who is doing this process as a part of my dissertation. Make it more positive, diplomatic. Use the language. Okay, it's important. Right, finding. If you are using a qualitative, as I said, you must listen to your interview on and on and on. And be careful with tape recorder. Make it as neat as possible. If you want to make any notes, do it straight away after you've done your interview. Because for example, you might have 30 interviews, and if you are not netjes, this voice belongs to whom? Oh no! And then you just mix them around. And you can get wrong story. And the people, because you promised, okay, once I'm done with this dissertation, I'll give you a copy of my thesis. I didn't say this! There you go. Yeah, so data management is very crucial. Be tidy as possible. And if you are using quant, then it's quite easy because basically you're just playing around with the data, or with a survey, and then you use SPSS. But the task basically how to interpret those numbers. And therefore, sometimes for those who are doing SPSS, I said, combine this methodology with at least semi-structured interview, at least 15 or 20. Because otherwise you will not get the story, trust me. You just know the numbers. Because basically having survey, the question is very short. You have to know how to make a good survey. Not too long, not too short. You have to be specific with the words. And therefore, before you do a survey or questionnaire, do a pilot study. What does it mean by pilot study? You ask your friends, what do you think about this? At least 10 people. What do you think about this questionnaire? Is it already clear? Or am I using so sophisticated language? And get your supervisor to get down and comment on this and revise this before you do your real data collection. Because otherwise, you give this to people, I don't understand what does it mean by this question, especially Indonesian. You have to bear in mind, you might use Indonesian, or you might use English, or you might use other languages. Because otherwise, they will not get the feeling, and that's danger. Okay? Oh, saya nggak ngerti itu mas, apa ini maksudnya ini? Oh, Bapak nggak ngerti. Oh, kalau gitu saya translate ya Pak ya. So we have to be flexible. Okay? And of course, as I said, if you are doing semi-structured interview, you need a form from your faculty, for example, to get a data access. And practicalities, you have to know to whom you have to go, secretary, and then get signature from the docent. All this practicality, you have to think ahead. If you do a survey, put that basically your quantitative calculations or your semi-structured interview question basically as an appendix or appendix. If it is one, appendix. If it's more than one, appendices. Okay? You don't have to transcribe the whole thing. No, it's not consuming. No. Just get the idea, get the story, what it's about, and therefore having robust research questions or hypotheses is very crucial. Because sometimes you get lost. Hang on a sec. What is the point of this research? What is the main question? If you are lost, always go back to chapter 1. And therefore, I said chapter 1 is a foundation of the whole chapter. If you are lost, what I'm doing now, look at the aim. What is the background of this idea? Look at the background. What is the research question of this? Oh, so many questions I've got on my survey. Oh, what is the research question? Go back to chapter 1. Now you can see the triangulation, the benang merahnya itu ada. Yeah? So, discussion and analysis. Some people like to separate them, but personally, I like to combine them. Because once I've got findings, I discuss and I analyze straight away, rather than I'll wait for another chapter. So, this is my finding, jebret, saya discuss. So, ini menurut saya ini. Sehingga orang itu nggak nunggu gitu loh. Oh, ini findingnya. Terus hasilnya apa ya? Nunggu chapter selanjutnya. Kelamaan. Orang lupa nanti.
Kalau yang funding itu, misalkan saya pakai MATLAB.
Ya.
Jadi kita ada pengalaman, ada tabel-tabel segala.
Ya.
Itu saat dimana kita masukin ke funding, saat dimana kita masukin ke appendix.
Kalau saya itu misalnya ada tabel, satu tabel tuh langsung saya analyze gitu. Jadi nggak usah di-separate tabel, sorry. So for example, tabel A, B, C, D, E. Okay? Okay? So once you finish with tabel A, di bawahnya langsung dianalisis. Ini interpretasinya seperti ini. And then B, itu semuanya langsung. And therefore you call this chapter discussion and analysis. Because otherwise, this chapter will be all the tables without any interpretation, and then we have to wait for the next chapter to read what does it mean by this table. So orang kan bolak-balik ini kan logikanya itu nggak enak gitu. So make your supervisors easy to understand, to read your story.
Tapi kalau yang tabelnya besar gitu, misalnya covariant matrix, itu kita nggak mungkin taruh di discussion and analysis kan?
Kalau gitu berarti at least you give a hint. For detailed explanation about this, have a look at the next chapter. But give a hint. And sometimes students didn't do that. Therefore, yang baca ini mana nih tabel ini kok tiba-tiba hilang gitu explanationnya. So you have to be clear, be explicit, give the hints. Where is the conjunction of this? Yeah, good. Right, discussion and analysis. What else? Oh yeah, talking about figure, table, graphic. Sometimes people like to be, to be fancy with this. They put all the tables in order to look smart. Is that so? Sometimes yes. And I always say to students, guys, if you don't know how to explain those tables, don't put any tables, don't put any graph. Because what's the meaningless? I can read that myself. So what? So once you put a table, a graphic, a chart, a figure, always explain that. Okay? For example, the business students basically, they have a graph of multinational enterprises, so explain that. So there's some people say, put the graphic, bang. And say, oh, what's the point of this? Where is the story? It's just table there. The table doesn't want to tell the story by itself. You have to tell the story. And always justify why something is there. Because basically, the thesis and dissertation is about justification. That's it. There is no right or wrong. As long as you can justify in academic terms why you did that, you're fine. Yeah? That's what we call research. There is no final answer. The truth is out there. X-Files. Right, now the last one. Yay! Conclusion and recommendation. Aha! Bear in mind, or believe it or not, I myself, and same goes with the other scientists, they always say conclusion is a difficult chapter, the most difficult chapter. You might think, oh, it's nearly done. Hang on, hold on, okay? Because basically, this is the whole compilation of the previous chapters. Conclusion is not a summary. Don't get it wrong. A summary, basically, you just sum up the previous thing, but conclusion, at least you have, okay, you must have a little bit of repetition what you've done in the previous chapter. You must give some future recommendations or future hints, basically. This research is not perfect, therefore, for the future reference, we blah blah. Yeah, and also you might give some policy implications or business implications or your own limitations. Okay, so therefore, conclusion is not a summary. If the summary, then that easy. Okay, but I remember for my PhD, it took me 3 or 4 months to make a conclusion. Because I was thinking, oh, it's going to be easy, we just have to summarize or put here and there from 1 to 9 chapter into conclusion. No. You must play around. What is the final things that you want to use in your final conclusion? And don't come up with something out of the blue. For example, you haven't mentioned SMEs, and all of a sudden you say, right, so therefore we have to focus on SMEs. Hey, hang on a sec. How is it possible? You haven't got any SMEs, and all of a sudden you mention about SMEs. By the way, you know SMEs? Correct. I just want to clarify whether you understand the jargon or not. Okay? Because sometimes I've been talking a lot. They don't know what does it mean, okay, but of course, you're an editorial union first, the chosen one. So, be careful with the conclusion, okay? And good conclusions is comprehensive, and also you can rephrase your research question again. Because the simple thing to check whether it's a good conclusion is whether you have answered your chapter 1. If you haven't answered your chapter 1, you haven't done your conclusion. Yeah? And therefore, sometimes, bear in mind, you have, let's say, how many chapters so far? 6. You have a lot of things in your mind, and therefore, sometimes, when you write conclusion, you forgot what is the real reason questions. You're, losing yourself in your own words. And therefore, I always check. So, this is a conclusion, and I open chapter 1. Right, okay, it's synthesized, makes sense, good. That's the way to check it. I'll give you a hint. So there you go. You have to double check whether you have answered chapter 1 in your conclusion. And recommendation. You have to give some recommendation as well. And for recommendation, you might cascade down into policy, or into business practice, or into literature, into the knowledge. So for policy, or policymaker, it's better to revise such and such. For literature, basically, we haven't found any something to there for such and such. So, that's a recommendation. Reference. Let me ask you, what's the difference between reference and bibliography? All the things that you are quoting, all the things that you're going to cite, which one? This is the hint from me.
Reference.
That's reference.
Exactly. Reference. Okay? So basically, don't put something that you will not going to use as your reference. All the reference must be in the whole chapter of your thesis or dissertation. But bibliography, basically, is a source that might not necessary to be quoted. So for example, if you read something, but you don't have to quote it, you can, therefore you put it as bibliography.
You just take the ideas from it.
Yes. Or perhaps from telly, but you put it there. And therefore, it's up to you whether you want to use that chapter as a reference or as a bibliography. And if you are not sure about this, ask your supervisor and challenge him. Do you know the difference between bibliography and reference? If he or she is a good scientist, he should be able to answer. Therefore, he says, no, use a reference. I don't care about bibliography, because it means that he doesn't want to know about the thing that you are inspired by. Okay, but they say, yeah, either way is okay. Aha! Yes.
Just to refresh.
Jadi kalau misalkan kita nggak boleh milih salah satu ya antara reference atau bibliografi. Maksudnya kalau bibliografi itu udah pasti reference ya, iya kan?
Kalau bibliografi sudah pasti reference. Belum tentu, karena bibliografi itu sesuatu yang menginspirasi Anda.
Tapi kalau kita taruh
kalau reference itu pasti bibliografi. Kalau reference itu pasti bibliografi. Karena Anda quote dan Anda terinspirasi. Kalau hanya inspirasi misalnya hanya dari TV gitu, oh ya, I got this idea, itu bibliografi.
Jadi amannya reference saja dong.
Amannya reference saja. Ya. Okay? So, but make sure, therefore you have to submit it online because they can check whether you have quoted all of your citation into your reference list. Because that's why I don't try to outsmart them, because we have a special software. Therefore, we ask you to use reference style, because everything is there. And I said, aha, well, why don't you put bibliography then, rather than reference? Because you haven't got this in your citation. How is it coming out of the book? Yeah? But just to be safe, ask your tutor, ask your supervisor, challenge them back.
Just a quick personal question on Wikipedia, for example.
Right, okay.
Where should I put it?
No, you don't, please.
Absolutely not in the reference, right?
No.
So should you get an idea from, like, for example, Wikipedia, because it does contain a lot of ideas, at most you can put it in bibliography, if it's even necessary, right?
Keep it to yourself.
Alright.
Don't put Wikipedia in your reference list.
Tapi di Wikipedia kan di dalamnya ada referensi lagi.
Ah, itu yang
Itu yang dipakai.
Itu yang dipakai.
So
bukan Wikipedia-nya, bukan Wikipedia 2012 last access.
So for example, like in these paragraphs in the Wikipedia, they always have like references, numbers 12 and stuff. You go to that reference and then
ada namanya siapa, misalnya Jordan Smith 2011 bla bla bla. Itu yang diambil, jangan Wikipedia 2011 last access last night. You're not primary school, it's new Bahasa school. No. Show some professionalism, okay? And be careful with this style, because each of faculty, they might have a different referencing style. Okay, because Chicago, that's the style for the medical school in the UK. For social sciences, they are using Harvard, and others using different. And bear in mind, it's slightly different because the name of the authors, the year, the name of publisher is different. It's here and there. And be consistent. Which one are you using? If you're using Chicago, get on with the Chicago. Not just this one is Chicago, Harvard, and then the other one is other. Hang on a sec. This is so gado-gado. Consistent. Also, language. If you are using American English, stick with that. For example, LABOL. That's American. But if you are using British English, there you go, you have to be consistent. Labor, color, organization, no organization. Be sensitive with that. Okay, and stick, which one are you going to use? Not mix them around. Because basically the whole naskah itu, you must be consistent. Harus satu kesatuan Pancasila. Berbeda-beda tetapi satu jua itu. Itu Bhinneka Tunggal Ika ya, okay. Itu part of Pancasila. Question, yes. What's your name again?
Fadli.
Fadli.
Would you recommend students to use citation machine?
How do you define citation machine?
A website that provides how to write.
Yeah. I do recommend that because that makes your life easier. Because otherwise you have to do it manually. If for master, okay, you might get less than 30 or 40, but for PhD, my reference list basically is how many pages? 45 pages.
But if it's about like a company website, for instance. If they try to defend, for instance, I once read about McDonald's, the CSR issue.
Yeah.
But then in their company website, they're defending about what is being accused by some American judges.
Right.
But,
is it from McDonald's website?
Yeah, from McDonald's website. But then again, when I wanted to put it in my paper, I have to put it right.
Of course.
From which
site. So basically, McDonald's website. Excuse me, in bracket here, and then what's the title, and then last access.
Okay.
And therefore it depends. I'm talking based on Harvard style. So that's why be clear which style are you going to use. Yeah? And that's a part of the sources as well. Because, when you're talking about the company, definitely you have to cite the website from the company. Because how on earth you might get this data if not from the company profile? At least as a starter, okay? Let's say it's sort of 5 minutes, but 5 o'clock, but we're going to finish this. Appendices, put all the relevant sources here, basically. Foto-foto yang bagus, masukkan, tapi kalau nggak terlalu, jangan dimasukkan, okay? Structure, interview form, itu masukkan di sini semua. Oke, appendices itu jangan di sini di website tuh dia nggak suka yang tebel-tebel, nggak suka. Yang relevan aja, kalau nggak relevan check them out. Kalau di Indonesia kan masukkan semua itu. Saya ingat itu, waduh, sampai namanya map itu peta-peta masukkan semua. Makes them happy. Bear in mind, it's not about the quantity, it's the quality. Yeah, so gitu. Therefore, see, we have done about it.
Sebenarnya saya masih bingung, Mbak, porsi masing-masing ini itu berapa ya? Jadi ada gambaran nggak istilahnya?
Kalau di handbooknya universitas biasanya mereka punya di handbook. That's why at the first time I always say check your handbook. And also later I will give you some handbook from Newcastle basically. If you're not clear, ask your supervisor. Explicitly dia bilang introduction itu 35%, literature itu sekitar 40%, blah, blah. It's just a guidance, you know, to keep them balanced. But in real world, when they mark your thesis, they're not going to check based on presentation. They just want to keep you balanced. Because sometimes students, itu masuknya semua di literature review gitu. Sehingga literature review itu 70%. Sedangkan findingnya tipis gitu. So keep them balanced, ya. Yang sedang-sedang saja, gitu. Yang too much is not good. Sedang-sedang saja. Okay? So methodology, that's okay. We're done with this. Another, justify the procedures. Again, methodology, the findings. Saya sampai hafal gitu, sehingga saya nggak usah satu persatu gitu. So you can read it yourself, okay? Discussion and analysis. What it's about? Recommendation. See. This is a good thing of how to make a good conclusion. Retrospective evaluations of the research and its contribution, recommendations, you know, identifications for further research. That's a good conclusion. So conclusion is not summary. Yeah? Appendices, this is the thing that you might use as your appendices or appendix. All these things, extract from an interview transcript if it is necessary, but be pragmatic. Don't try to get the whole story, just get the essence, right? We've done this, but writing plan. Next time, hopefully, we have another writing workshop. I hope that you bring your material, and then we can have sort of clinic. So basically, we have 20 minutes next. It depends how many students, okay? So if we have 15 like this, let's say sort of 20 minutes per person, and next. So that's the way we did it in the UK. Since I love nature, it helped my nature. So see, kita berembuk gitu, bersatu gitu, okay? This is what we call as brainstorming. Right, so if you still have any questions this month, email, but I want to give you some ideas.